Without further ado, I would like to introduce our Director General, Bruno Carrasco of the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department. And Bruno is actually my boss, and he will be delivering formal opening remarks. Over to you, Bruno. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much, Sam. It's really a pleasure to be here. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to all of you. It's my great pleasure to warmly welcome you to the 2021 Asia Women Leaders Program, AWLP for short, virtual alumni webinar. We are deeply delighted to see so many of you here today to strengthen your alumni network and refresh our collective motivation and commitment to gender equality and women's empowerment in a virtual context. On a more personal note, it's just been under 2 months since I took up my new role, and I'm very pleased to be invited by Sam to share some reflections on ADB's commitment to gender equity, women empowerment, and efforts to champion a more inclusive and progressive Asia Pacific. I have worked on many projects across many years at ADB, including on such things as gender budgeting as part of a wider public sector management reform program, and on many of the micro and small medium enterprise projects that do, I think, a very good job at promoting and developing women entrepreneurs. I have seen with my own eyes the power of change and the impact that these projects can bring. On International Women's Day, about a month back, a spotlight was placed on the importance of women's leadership in building back better for a more equal future post-COVID. ADB provides support to women's leadership in public and private sectors at all levels, enabling policy and institutional reforms and focused on training. Since its launch in 2014, as Sam mentioned earlier, the AWLP has been ADB's signature initiative to address gaps in women's representation and voice in decision-making in Asia and the Pacific region. Now, it has been quite a journey. Over the past 7 years, 125 senior women government officials from mostly ministries of finance, planning, women and children, and infrastructure related ministries from 27 developing member countries in Asia Pacific have participated in the AWLP. In addition, some 35 eminent women leaders from government, private sector, and civil society in the region have joined as motivational resource speakers, sharing their experiences and insights on progress towards gender equality in these countries and inspiring participants in their personal leadership journeys. Now, it is an unfortunate reality that in this day and age, women still do face significant hurdles in rising up to leadership positions, mostly due to socio-cultural norms that define leadership as, quote, masculine, and limit women's self-confidence and policies and practices that do not support work-life balance and greater distribution to make sure that care work is equally distributed between men and women. For the stark reality is really that women's representation and decision-making in the Asia-Pacific region is improving, but still too slowly. On average, women's representation in parliaments has increased from approximately 13% of seats held by women in the year 2000 to approximately 20% in 2020, with South Asia and the Pacific lagging behind with around 17%. Women holding ministerial positions are mostly less than 19% across the board, with the only exception of Fiji at 23% and Georgia at 36%. We need to do better than this to empower women to contribute fully to their country's development. Now, at ADB, we firmly believe that gender-balanced leadership results in higher productivity and better development outcomes. Effective women leaders provide positive role models and contribute to changing social perceptions about women and girls. Women leaders in government have an important role in ensuring that public policies and services are more inclusive and address gender-based and gender-specific needs and priorities. Now, turning to our work at the Asian Development Bank, accelerating progress in gender equality is one of the 7 operational priorities in ADB's Corporate Strategy 2030 that was adopted back in 2018. ADB operationalizes its high commitment to gender equality through its investment projects, policy dialogue, and knowledge work in our regional member countries. The operational plan for accelerating progress in gender equality is aligned with the transformative gender agenda of Sustainable Development Goal number 5. Supporting enhanced gender equality in decision-making and leadership is one of its 5 core pillars. Let me now turn to highlight how ADB supports women's leadership in Asia and the Pacific countries besides this AWLP program. ADB has a particular focus on women's leadership in projects supporting women entrepreneurs and women working in hard sectors such as ICT, finance, STEM or science, technology, engineering, and math, and non-traditional technical vocational education sectors, including mechanics. For example, in infrastructure projects, we have provided scholarships to female high school graduates in engineering and climate change related topics so that they will become the future leaders in these important sectors. We also invest significantly in girls' education, including in STEM, to challenge stereotypes and provide girls and young women with tools to succeed in STEM-related careers. In urban governance and infrastructure projects, leadership and technical training has been provided to elected women leaders at multiple levels of local governments, and governance systems have been established to incorporate poor women's needs and set female representation targets. This has resulted in prioritizing of investment in hospitals, local markets with designated women traders sections, and setting up entrepreneurship training centers, for example. Over the past year, the COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated women's contributions as national leaders, community organizers, healthcare workers, innovative entrepreneurs, and caregivers at home. The pandemic has also highlighted gender-based inequalities in unemployment, unpaid care work, and poverty, along with rising domestic violence. We are proud to say that gender equality has been at the heart of ADB's pandemic response. Led by Samantha and our gender equity team, the team has ensured that all our COVID-19 response and recovery programs have proactively mainstreamed gender considerations to ensure interventions which specifically meet the critical needs of women and girls, including particularly women frontline workers across employment, social protection, and health programs. This was a terrific accomplishment. For example, cash transfer programs and food subsidies have been targeted at women and children in vulnerable households to ensure that social protection benefits directly reach the hands of women. And financial support was also provided to help female entrepreneurs survive the economic downturn. We have also supported dedicated programs to to scale up services in response to growing gender-based violence. ADB is also committed to enhancing gender equality, diversity, and inclusion in its own workplace. We were the first international financial institution to achieve the second level economic dividends for gender equality, or EDGE, certification back in 2019. EDGE is a leading global assessment methodology and business certification standard for gender equality, which externally evaluates organizations against 4 pillars: gender balance at all levels, pay equity, effective policies and practices to ensure equitable career flows, and an inclusive culture. By the end of 2020, ADB total staff included 59% women, and women represented 38% of the international staff, which is an increase from 34% back in 2016. And this comes against a target of 40% by 2024. We have increased flexibility for staff to work remotely through ongoing pandemic uncertainties and increased parental leave for both women and men. In addition, ADB is currently embarking on a cultural transformation initiative, which will place diversity and inclusion at the center of our organizational values. Let me conclude by emphasizing how much the Asia and the Pacific region needs strong leaders like yourselves, making sure that decision-making is made to be able to support and continually champion the needs of women and children, and maintain the momentum for accelerating progress in gender equality, especially as the region recovers from the pandemic. We fully appreciate your commitment to AWLP and shaping its future directions to give opportunities to more women leaders to benefit from this unique and targeted leadership training. With these words, I wish all of you a successful and a very, very productive program. Thank you very much for your attention. Over to you, Sam.